Every spring and fall, millions of birds migrate over Ohio, but they face a threat along the way: nighttime collisions with brightly lit buildings that leave birds either injured or dead. IdeaStream producer Stephanie Jarvis reports.
It's just a few minutes past 8 a.m., but Tim Jasinski has spent the past 3 hours combing the streets of downtown Cleveland looking for injured or killed birds.
So 6 birds. 3 alive, 3 dead. It's an even number.
Jasinski and crew are part of Lights Out Cleveland, a volunteer initiative that collects migrant birds that have flown into glass buildings.
It's lit up at night so the birds think they can get through the glass because you got all these little tiny migrant traps here, but then also their reflectivity of the glass. Birds don't understand that. And even during the day, birds think they can get through to fly up in there. There's a little bush in there which could attract the birds to it, so they just can't understand that concept of glass.
Jasinski spends his daylight hours as a wildlife rehabilitation specialist at the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center in Bay Village.
Got any birds today?
Not yet.
All right, that's good.
All right.
This particular weekday morning saw very few feathered fatalities. During the height of migration, Jasinski and crew on average collect 50 to 80 birds a day, both alive and dead. The largest collection came in at 115.
You guys get anything? 0? That's good.
For now, Jasinski collects the hurt birds to take them to work so they can be treated and set free. But he'll be back tomorrow morning with his flock.
Tim Jasinski's group of volunteers is just one aspect of Lights Out Cleveland. The other, convincing building owners to flip the switch overnight. To learn more, I sat down with Jasinski and Harvey Webster, the Director of Wildlife Resources at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, here in the studio last week. I began the conversation by asking Harvey Webster about the origins of the Lights Out initiative.
So the Lights Out Cleveland initiative is part of a broader initiative across the state of Ohio that's coordinated by Matt Schumer of the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative. And basically the notion is there are these great waves of migratory birds that wash across the landscape in spring and fall migration, from mid-March to the 1st of June, from mid-August to the 1st of November. And oftentimes those birds can be going through our cities or landing in our cities or flying over our cities, and the cities can pose lots of risks to them. Most notably, our tall lit buildings become almost irresistible beacons to them, and they are drawn to them for reasons we're not really clear about, and they either get captured by the light and then exhaust themselves on the ground and become food for predators, or they actively smash into the glass. So lit buildings and glass are two real concerns for migratory birds, and the numbers that fly through town are not trivial. There are probably millions of birds that are washing across the landscape every spring and fall. So Lights Out Cleveland, part of the Ohio Lights Out Network, we're trying to find ways to both determine who's flying through here, what kinds of numbers, when they're doing it, and then more importantly, take that data and then hopefully work with building owners and managers to find ways that we might mitigate the risk.
In the meantime, birds are smashing into buildings, as you said. Tim, that's where you come in. You and a group of great volunteers are going out every morning.
Yeah, it's very tiring, but every morning we get down there about 5 o'clock. We meet at a certain spot, and then we see how many people show up for the day. Sometimes we have extra people, sometimes we have just people that are pretty much on the schedule for that day. And then we kind of make a game plan of, you guys do this certain route and we'll do this certain route, and just move from there. And
looking for birds that have survived.
Looking for both. My priority as a rehabber is to catch the birds that are injured or stunned, get them safely into a paper lunch bag, and then we get them back to the car as soon as we can to let them calm down and just be in a dark, quiet spot. That's one of the main things with rehab. And then we also categorize the birds that are killed on the streets, and we take down data of what side of the building it is, what time it is, any other things that we can note on there, and then we bag those birds, and those get eventually donated to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, where they can be donated to their research collection.
You brought me some stunning numbers, 1,180 birds just since September that you have been part of the recovery of.
Exactly, yeah. So, and those are the birds that we found. There's way more than that we're not accessing because of predators or because of the little levels and of things of the buildings that we can't access.
So they don't actually get to the ground.
So they don't actually get to the ground, yes. So it is a huge number of, a lot of those birds are very rare for Ohio and even in species of concern too.
And Harvey, you've brought some of those for us to take a look at here. Birds that are rare that we can't afford to lose 2, 3, 4, and yet we are.
Right, so we have a specimen right here. This is a study skin from the museum's educational collection. This is a golden-winged warbler, and this is a species that's in a steep state of decline. And so when you have one individual that smashes a building and does not survive, it has significance for the entire population. And there's an even rarer bird that nests up in Michigan called the Kirtland's warbler. And we kind of are just sort of really nervous because we know that probably one day one of these buildings will in fact claim the life of a Kirtland's warbler, and there's probably less than 2,000 or 3,000 of those left on the planet.
You have a dozen different species here. Tim, what are we seeing the most of hitting our buildings?
So a lot of, I think we're over 60 species now that we've picked up for fall, but a lot of them are more prone to window strikes, especially the lower dwelling species in the habitat, such as this American woodcock. We get a lot of calls about these guys at the nature center and say, I got this crazy bird from outer space. I've never seen it before. It's got huge eyes. And I'm like, it's American woodcock. And so these guys are very prone because they're really fast flyers. They're very powerful, strong, heavy birds, and often when they hit a window, it's not good for that woodcock. Severe injuries, and a lot of them don't survive.
What we've been recommending to building owners and managers is, turn the lights off at midnight and then keep them off until dawn in spring and fall migration. At least that removes a big chunk of the night. And if you think about it, why do you light your building? You do sort of market the building, and who are you marketing to at 3 in the morning? The companion piece, though, is what to ultimately do about glass. Because glass is a problem whether it's transparent, the birds think they can fly through it to get inside, and the lighting at early morning, sometimes a lit atrium is a beckoning place for them to go. Sure. They're drawn to the light, not knowing that there's solid glass there. But also, if you've ever been outside and looked at a pane of glass, it has a mirror-like effect, and it reflects the surroundings. And oftentimes, they think it's simply an extension of the habitat that they're in. So either way, glass is a huge thing. The American Bird Conservancy has estimated that between lit buildings and glass, especially glass, maybe as many as 1 billion songbirds are dying every year.
Billion?
In the United States.
Wow.
1 billion.
Now, you said that birds look at things in a different manner than we do, so we could put things up on the buildings that would reflect them or deflect them away and not cause us a problem.
So that there are a number of films that can be applied to glass that either have a geometric pattern that becomes kind of almost invisible to us. You kind of get used to it, as well as the fact that bird species can see in the near ultraviolet. They have an area of sensitivity that we do not. And you can create films that have alternating bands of both reflecting or absorbing material in the near ultraviolet, so they see it as kind of pickup sticks, whereas it's totally transparent to us.
Okay. Tim, we talk about all these birds and your great group of volunteers. There have to be people out there who are hearing this for the first time and saying, I would love to come and help rescue the birds that are still alive and collect the ones that have perished. How do they do that?
Absolutely. So we're always looking for more volunteers. It is a lot of work walking around down there. They can go to Lake Erie Nature and Science Center's website. There's an email right on the website they can go to, and then they can say, hey, this is how I want to help. We need people to help do data entry. There's a lot of things that we can need help for in this program.
I mentioned that number of almost 1,200 birds since September. What I didn't mention is that 430 of those did survive, largely due to your efforts. So great, thank you for that. Yeah. I got to wonder, though, when you go to a company and you say, help us with the birds, what's been the response?
But before I answer that question, just let me give a huge shout out to Tim Jasinski and his team of volunteers. This is a Herculean task that they've undertaken. It's an amazing example of citizen science, because not only are they rescuing the birds that get rescued and released are banded, and that information all becomes part of a scientific database.
That's how you learn the migration patterns.
Exactly, and then the ones that are recovered that are not alive ultimately end up in the scientific collections of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. It's a brilliant example of what citizen scientists can be all about. And then also we are looking to Downtown Cleveland Alliance to help us get the word out to building owners. We've been talking to many of the building owners around here. We have to give a shout out to the Cleveland Browns. We've been working with Brad Moore, Director of Stadium Operations for the Browns. And First Energy Stadium is an active collaborator with us.
They do put out a lot of light.
They do. And so what we're trying to do is utilize this amazing effort at identifying the problem that's happening in our own backyard so that folks are first aware of it, and then hopefully we can hit the ground running as we get into next spring and have all of these building owners and managers on board.